Inkee Falcon gimbal versus the Hohem iSteady Pro 4. Which is the best action camera gimbal? Hello friends and welcome back to the studio. This is Susie with Gemini Connect. One of the most frequently asked questions on our channel recently is which of these two gimbals is the best for the GoPro? And so I have here with me a GoPro Hero 10 on each of these cameras, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of this question. But before we get into that, let's address another frequently asked question, which is why would you even bother with a gimbal with a GoPro? If you've already heard my spiel, then you can go ahead and skip to this timestamp below, but in case you haven't, let's talk about that. So GoPro does come with Hypersmooth, which is really awesome in-body stabilization. And you arguably don't need a gimbal if you're only going to use one for stabilizing your footage. But whenever you do shoot in Hypersmooth, it does crop into your image a little bit. So if you want to shoot without that slight image crop, then you might need a gimbal. You also might need one if you're going to be shooting in cinematic settings, which is when your shutter speed is double that of your frame rate, which typically means your shutter speed is really slow, and therefore Hypersmooth isn't going to be doing a whole lot for you in terms of stabilizing your footage. Also, whenever you're shooting in low light, which I don't really recommend doing with your GoPro, but if you happen to be doing it, then Hypersmooth is disabled in low light settings, and so shooting on a gimbal will give you more stable footage in darker situations. And finally, motion time lapses. If you ever want to do these with your camera, which I always do, then you definitely need a gimbal to do that. Alright friends, I'm out here with two GoPro Hero 10s. They are both on different gimbals. We've got the Inkee Falcon over here, and we've got the Hohem iSteady Pro 4 over here. So this is a walking and vlogging test with both cameras and the gimbals, trying to see just how steady they are when I'm walking. We're also shooting in linear with horizon leveling. Now I have both cameras facing forward, and this is what it looks like as we are walking. Alright, now I'm going to break into a little run. So I'm running with both cameras and the gimbals. Spin the cameras around to be walking and vlogging. Now I'm going to break into a little run. So let's start with the common features. Both of these gimbals were released in 2021, and their defining feature was being compatible with the GoPro Hero 9 and 10, as well as previous GoPros up until I think the Hero 5. So if you look at older GoPros, almost all of them are not compatible with the newer Hero 9 and 10, which is slightly bigger and heavier than all previous GoPros. So if you want a GoPro gimbal that's compatible with the newer GoPros, then you are kind of down to these two choices here. One big downside to both of these gimbals though is that they only work with the naked GoPro. You cannot use them with the GoPro inside of the media mod, which is a big downside. They are very form-fitting, so there's no way that you can put the media mod and the GoPro into either of these gimbals, and that's a big downside because we use the media mod all the time to connect our external microphones to our GoPros. And so Hohem or Inkee, if you guys are listening, then please make a version of these gimbals that supports the media mod. I've heard that one might be on the horizon soon, so stay tuned and we'll try to update you if one of those gimbals does come out. Next, both of these gimbals have pretty similar controls and features. They both have joysticks to control the orientation of the camera, as well as different modes. There's 4 different modes that you can cycle through. There's the pan, tilt, and follow, pan, follow, all lock, and POV mode. Both gimbals can also shoot whenever the camera is in vertical mode, and the gimbals themselves can be inverted. They're both splash proof, although not waterproof, and they can be connected to GoPros so that you can control the GoPro somewhat from the gimbal handle. But there is a bit of a catch, which I will tell you about later on in this video, and you'll definitely want to hear what that catch is. But this is where all of the common features end, so now let's talk about the differences between these two gimbals. First of all is the size. So both of these gimbals are pretty lightweight and definitely travel friendly. However, the Hohem is slightly taller and heavier than the Inkee gimbal. And so I personally prefer a smaller gimbal. I like that it's a lot easier to travel with. But some people may not like the smaller size because if you'll notice, I have pretty small hands. And my hand is, already kind of running out of space on this gimbal without running into some of the buttons here. And so if you have a larger hand, you might prefer the Hohem because the handle is a lot thicker and just longer and better for bigger hands. Another big physical difference between these two gimbals is how the camera is attached to them. So on the Inkee, the GoPro is attached via the standard GoPro mount. You just use the thumb screw to put the camera into the gimbal, and it's a super secure connection. When it comes to the Hohem, they have a different attachment system. It's fairly straightforward, but it took me a little bit of fiddling to figure out how it worked at first. But you just take this little orange lever and you undo it. And then you can pull your camera out and re-secure it here. So it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it, but it took me a little bit of practice just because I wasn't familiar with this mechanism. But it's really nice because you don't have a thumb screw that might be floating around. You have all of your attachment points here that remain on the gimbal at all times. Another big difference between these two gimbals is evident here on the back screen. So you'll notice that on the Inkee, you can fully see the back screen of your GoPro. Makes it really easy to use the touchscreen menu. But here on the Hohem, I'm not sure why they did this, but your touchscreen and your LCD is partially obstructed. And I actually find it very difficult to change my settings or use the touchscreen of my GoPro. I have to take it out of this mount in order to do that. So this whole thing is not very well designed. I really wish that I could fully see my LCD and be able to access my full menu on my GoPro on the Hohem. Next up are the physical attachment points. So as you can see, both of these gimbals are attached to little tripods because they both have 1/4-inch tripod threads on the bottom of the gimbals, which is really nice for adding little accessories such as these mini tripods. Now that's it in terms of attachment points on the Inkee, but for the Hohem, we have an additional 1/4-inch tripod thread here on the side of the gimbal, and so this is really nice for attaching other accessories such as external microphones or anything else that you might need. Next up is the GoPro remote control connection, and this is that little caveat that I mentioned earlier where both cameras can do it. You can attach the GoPro wirelessly through Bluetooth to both of the gimbals so that you can control the camera using some of the buttons on the gimbal. However, that doesn't work super well with the Inkee, unfortunately. It works really well with the Hero 9 on the Inkee, but with the Hero 10, I don't know what's up with it, but it's just a really wonky connection. It does connect, but I can't fully use all of the controls on the gimbal. So that's something that I think Inkee just needs to work out. Maybe in a future firmware update they can fix that. Now here on the Hohem, that's not the case. It works perfectly well with both the Hero 9 and the Hero 10. So in terms of the Bluetooth remote control connection, that definitely is a point for the Hohem. Next up is the phone app control. So both the Inkee and the Hohem do have accompanying apps for iPhone and for Android that you can download, and they're really nice because they can give you additional functionality over your gimbal. You can use a little remote control to move the gimbal from side to side or up and down, and you can also change some of the actual settings on the gimbal. I would say that the Inkee app, it feels very basic. It's kind of like it's the first edition of the app, and even though it's functional, it just doesn't have the best UI or design. Versus the Hohem app, it's much better, I think because Hohem has come out with several other GoPro gimbals before, so their app is a lot smoother, more intuitive, and easier to use. So points to Hohem for that one. Now along those lines, if you ever want to do a motion time lapse, which is one of my #1 reasons for having a gimbal for a GoPro or any camera at all, then that's something that you'll want to do in the Hohem app. And it's very easy to do, super straightforward. For the Inkee, on their product description on their website, they actually say that you can do a motion time-lapse, but I don't see how to do that. I don't see it in their manual, I don't see it in their phone app, so supposedly you can do it with the Inkee, but I'm not sure how to do it. Now, if you ever want to go out and vlog with your GoPro and the gimbal, then you can take both of these setups out and do it. But with the Inkee, it's very easy because all you do is take this front button and you triple press. And the camera turns around to face you, and it's very easy to walk around and vlog with it. When it comes to the Hohem, there unfortunately is not a way to do that. You just have to physically turn the gimbal and the camera around, which is definitely doable, but I like the ease of use with this button here on the Inkee. So if you plan to vlog, Inkee is a little bit more user-friendly. Next up, let's talk about battery life. So both of these gimbals have built-in lithium-ion batteries that are rechargeable via USB-C. But for the Inkee, the battery life is about 9 hours, which is pretty respectable. And for me, that's more than enough for how often I typically go out and use a gimbal and a camera. But for the Hohem, its battery is a lot bigger and stronger, and it lasts for 14 hours, which is a lot more than the Inkee. In fact, the battery life is so long that you can actually plug into the USB function here on the Hohem, and you can actually use it as a power bank to charge other devices or cameras. And that's something that you can't do in the Inkee. So Hohem wins in terms of both battery life and usability. And the final comparison point is the price. So the Inkee Falcon goes for $119 US versus the Hohem iSteady Pro 4, which goes for $99 US. So they're not very cheap gimbals, they're kind of expensive, but the Inkee is slightly more expensive. So in conclusion, which of these two gimbals is best for your action camera? That's a really tough question to answer because they both had their pros and cons, but overall I would say that the Hohem scored higher just because it has a better connection to the GoPro, and it also has a better smartphone app, and just the overall experience of using the Hohem is better and more polished, and it also comes in at a lower price. Does have a pretty big fatal flaw though in terms of this back screen. It's just really hard to see all that you're shooting, and to me I can no longer access my menu on my GoPro whenever it's inside of this gimbal. So that's a pretty big flaw. But when it comes to the Inkee, I really like the size. I think that the size is more travel friendly, and I'm more likely to bring this gimbal along just because I don't always use a gimbal with my GoPro. But whenever I would like to have one, then it's really nice to just have this in my bag and I don't feel it weighing down very much. But the biggest problem with the Inkee is that the connection to the Hero 10 is basically non-existent. I cannot currently control my Hero 10 whenever it's connected to the Inkee Falcon gimbal. That is something that I think Inkee will improve in the future, hopefully very soon. But as of this moment, if you want to use the Hero 10 in this gimbal, it will work in terms of stabilization. But if you want to be able to control your GoPro Hero 10 using the buttons on the gimbal, then that's not something that the Inkee is currently able to do. So hope this helps, and yeah, let me know in the comments which one of these two gimbals would you use with your GoPro, or would you use any gimbal at all? You know, GoPros are pretty great without gimbals. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.